Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws Podcast with East Forest. I'm East Forest. Thanks for joining us this week. I have an episode with my partner Radha. We're calling this the Radha-Krishna Roundtable. And I always enjoy getting the opportunity to dive into her world and our world. And so some of it's quite personal and some of it's us musing about what we've been coming up against and facing. And thought it might be fun. We were driving back from Boulder, and we actually did this in the car. So I was able to get most of the car noise out of the mics, and that's what you're going to hear. But first, just want to give you a couple quick announcements. It looks like I'm going to be doing a live stream ceremony on October 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be most likely, I'm sure, on YouTube Live again. So you can watch at eastforest.org or youtube.com/eastforestmusic. That's October 3rd. It's a Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I always enjoy the opportunity for the global community to come together and dive deep. That'll be a long-form ceremony style, kind of in the style of Music for Mushrooms, of improvisational playing. And speaking of Music for Mushrooms, I have a new release coming out starting on October 2nd. So this is actually, I'm calling it the Spores ceremony because the album starting to come out on October 2nd is called Spores. And Spores is something that is really like, it's basically a 1-hour version of the Music for Mushrooms, a soundtrack for the Psychedelic Practitioner album. So think of it like a highlights reel. All the greatest moments, basically I edited it into an hour version, and it also has a vinyl version. So because it's a 5-hour album, normally the Music for Mushrooms album, this made it more compact. So the Spores version comes out on, like the first song comes out on the 2nd, and then the next week one more song, and then on the new moon that month, in the middle of the month, the whole record comes out. So if you want to get your copy of the vinyl, it's a beautiful vinyl. It's sort of this dark chocolate brown, the actual vinyl with this spore print in the middle. So it actually looks like the underside of a mushroom. And Maria Gauthier did the outside packaging, which is beautiful. And then it features some artwork from the original album by Daniel F. Birch. So there's only 300 of those. And they're going to be sold at music.eastforest.org, or if you just go to eastforest.org, you can click on the music tab, and you should be able to find your way to purchasing that vinyl. That's the only place you will be able to buy it, and we will be shipping worldwide. Sorry that the shipping cost to Australia and Europe is so expensive. It just is. I don't know what to say. It's crazy. But my dad is the one who's currently shipping all this out. He's Mr. Merch Man in Salem, Oregon. So God bless Bunik, as we call him, because he's getting all those orders out there for you. So get them while they're there to get. A couple of other quick things. On October 22nd, I just got an offer to do my very first real-world show here in Boise, Idaho. It's going to be at the Botanical Garden with Magic Sword. I always think like Major Lazer in my head, but it's Magic Sword. It's an amazing group. Should be a really interesting night. If you're in town or in the area, you want to come in, and everyone's going to have like their little pod space in this giant outdoor space. It's weird to be doing a real world show, but I guess I'm really excited. It's been a long time. It's been since Australia in February. I've been doing the live streams, but, it's a different beast. So that's on October 22nd, and details will be on my website soon. It actually hasn't been officially announced, so don't tell anyone I told you. And I'm doing a little live stream on Instagram for Avocado. They're like a wellness company my friend runs on this Thursday, September 24th. So that'll be on their Instagram Live. I think it's at like 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., 3 p.m., something like that. But that should be fun. I'll be playing some Ram Dass stuff and my stuff, but at the piano. And lastly, the Ram Dass Instrumentals album came out. I hope you're enjoying that. I'm going to play a track at the end called Please Pass the Bliss, which you're familiar with, but it's the instrumental version. And I wanted to honor all the amazing musicians who played on the record. There's so many. And that song actually just got featured in a playlist on Spotify, this classical playlist, which is really cool. Because that track, when I first had just the piano track of Please Pass the Bliss, it was one of my favorites. And I kind of like, when you have your favorite tracks that you've created, you're like, oh, this is like special. I want to covet this and have the best time to release it. And I almost didn't put it on the Ram Dass album because I was like, it's so awesome just as piano, but you know, it's Ram Dass. So I was like, I'm gonna do it. Let's do it. And it turned out awesome. But I'm happy that it now is also out in its piano only form. So check that out where you listen to music. That's a digital release. And that's all I'm going to blather about for now. Thanks for giving the podcast reviews. It really matters. And thanks for sharing the podcast. And you can always write us at team@eastforest.org. Oh, last thing. I know it's been a lot of things. I did a playlist with Loki the Wolf Dog. It's music for dogs. It's on Spotify. It's a way to release oxytocin for dogs, humans, and drop into that inner knowing space. Okay, you guys, here we go. This is my conversation with Marissa Radha-Wepner. It's the Radha-Krishna Roundtable. So this is the first ever Radha-Krishna Roundtable, especially one that is taking place inside a moving vehicle going 86 miles an hour. For the record, 80. Let's just say 80, the legal limit. And we thought we'd do this in the car, which I guarantee is a very strange sight for the U-Haul driver I just passed who's watching two people hold microphones in their hands while they're driving on I-15.
Let's just say also don't try this at home or
Yeah.
while you're driving. It's not recommended, probably.
I'm not actually holding a microphone, but we'll just let you. It's a hands-free situation, but we are still recording a podcast while driving because it's a 9-hour drive from southern Utah to the Boise home central, and we're doing this trip fairly regularly. It's a 600-mile trip, 9 hours, stop in Salt Lake typically, and this seemed like a good way to do the, honor the time because we've been wanting to have a joint conversation where we're like, well, why the hell not do it? And we're sitting next to each other for 9 hours, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself on this drive right now about an hour ago when I was driving, how when the quarantine first hit and we were sort of deciding should we stay in Boise or go down to Boulder, and feeling like it was this huge decision, like we probably couldn't go because what if you went and we couldn't get back and they closed the state borders and things like that, and how much has shifted because now we just go.
Well, there are a lot of people, tourists, I noticed down there too, and so I think a lot of people are hitting the road or have been because, one, that's all you can really do, more or less, and two, there's a recognition that winter's coming, and also, what if we lose more freedoms? Maybe it's sort of like carpe diem while the Titanic is sinking. Let's get out there, which...
YOLO.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I thought the ethos of this could be a little bit like to just kind of explore like what's been on your mind, my mind, what we're going through, because I'm sure whatever we're going through, other people are going through, and it's a way to just sort of have that conversation and kind of keep it current and I don't know, just see where it goes. So let me start it off by asking a question to you.
Okay.
And just that, what are some of the things that you've been finding have been bubbling up for you lately? That's sort of like, it's like the core of your work that you're doing right now. You're processing challenges, the things that you're facing internally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like I vacillate. Earlier in this drive, when we were listening to Edward Snowden and Joe Rogan, we paused from that for a second. I looked out the window and into the smoky landscape and declared something like, everything is super fucked. And
you've been saying that? That's been a theme past couple months.
Yeah, but it's
weird.
Not a constant theme.
No.
Like, I don't always feel that way, but at moments I feel that way deeply.
And it's strange for me because I feel that at least, I don't know, the past 6 weeks or so, I find myself consoling you. And I found like pre-pandemic, it was more like you consoling me about how difficult the world is. And now I'm suddenly the guy who's like, we're going to get through this. And I mean, I'm not sanguine about it. I'm in the sense that I feel like, we're just going to get back to normal. Not at all. And anyone who listens to the podcast knows that. It's more that we've both talked about how we see it as the fire being a great metaphor, that we're burning the fields. And we both talked, well, let's get to that notion about if there's more fire to burn later. But I want to let you continue. What's been coming up for you?
Yeah, well, like I said, there's those moments where I feel great despair and like a huge burst of like kind of like it feels like eyes wide open hopelessness. That's where
Wow.
the word super fucked comes from. And I also feel huge waves of grief from what's happening in the collective. And then in my own life, like we talked, a few days ago just about how sad I was about not being able to gather and celebrate and be with others. And, we were driving and I was crying. And that was the moment when you were like, it's going to be okay. And then I also feel really grateful for this time. And I feel like a warrior who's ready for the shift that's occurring and inspired for a new change. So I feel lots of things at once.
Yeah, when you were crying, now I remember we've talked about grief. And like, what does it mean to carry grief on your shoulder? What does it mean to carry, it's essentially meaning like it's always with you, whether in the background or the forefront, and then we talked about how that wonderful Ram Dass quote, how he says, when you're grieving, that's when you're the closest to God.
Yeah, and there was the obituary for the land where the woman, I forget her name.
The show, The Daily.
Yeah. And in that was just yesterday we listened to that, and she had this beautiful line that said, grief is love. And that felt so true to me, where you're grieving what you love, and it's because you love that you grieve. Otherwise, you wouldn't grieve in the same way. And so when I was crying, even it was just from this, like, I loved these things and these moments and the preciousness of what was so simple before, and that all of that has been taken away, made me really sad.
Yeah. And I remember, it's like, how do you grieve?
Is that a personal question or like a larger existential?
It's rhetorical and it's an actual question. I'm asking myself. I'm thinking this through, like, because I think about the times when that's happened for me, and how do you do it? And I remember you saying, like, in essence, it's about a flow. It's about keeping something coming in, letting it move.
Yeah.
And it's about holding it with a tenderness and a love.
Yeah.
Because it's, how else can you? I mean,
in that moment when I was so sad and you kind of tried to cheer me up with like, well, think about all these other things that we have done instead. And I said, well, it's sort of apples and oranges. And yes, all those things are true. And I just need to feel really sad right now and let myself cry.
And that maybe hits it on the nose. Like, that's how you grieve, is by, I need to do this right now. Like, this is coming up, so it needs to come out. And that's a really wonderful reminder. How do you hold grief? Because that's really what we're doing. That's what this process is about holding grief on our shoulder, holding it tenderly like the baby that we bring with us. That is the midwifing.
Yeah.
And it's, the baby's heavy sometimes, and sometimes the baby's crying, and sometimes the baby's beautiful.
Well, even, being a mother, and I can so viscerally have that body memory of holding a baby. When you hold a baby, you're feeling love. It's with love, always.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah, so the smoke's been in the air in a lot of places, and it's been coming and going in the mountain regions here, all over, wherever we are. And we're thinking a lot about how fires, in that daily episode, obituary for the land, I wish I knew the poet's name, but the woman had this great story about how there's some fir trees or some kind of tree that right before it gets completely singed, all of its pine cones on the tree explode and release all their seeds into the ground. And we know that the fires fertilize the ground, so there's all this new growth that comes out of it, but it's so incredibly destructive and violent, and it's unpredictable, and And so we were thinking about, of course, this metaphor of everything's being cleared around us and burning just like it's never burned before. And I had this wild thought, and I'm going to say it, not that I'm saying I believe this, but it came to me. Like, if I trust in all that is, and I trust in everything sort of being in this grand design, which in some ways, like, a design so unconceivable to any supercomputer. It's just the complexity of it, like you sense on a psychedelic journey.
Mm-hmm.
Then Donald Trump, if he were to win, and I hope he doesn't, but if he were to become the president for a second term, I would have to say that, well, that's God too. And if that's the case, then I could only look at it to think like the forest has more fire to burn. In order for the new growth to be what it needs to be in our society, we have to burn more. And I say that knowing what that means and the suffering. I don't want any of that.
And he'll be part of the catalyst that causes more to burn.
We already is, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, how could you see it any other way? And when I see the forest fire and I think about the role it plays and the chaos it brings, but it's like, oh my God, have you ever thought about Donald Trump fertilizing the land for like a new earth? And you were like, oh, he's a light worker, like, or that's what they mean jokingly. And I'm like, in a sick way, like he's totally talk about an unknowing puppet. But it's like the ultimate trickster. Like he grew out of the soil of our own demons and darkness and obsession with social media and reality TV, which is a weird thing in itself, the term.
Yep. You're reminding me as I'm listening to you right now, say this, the first ceremony that you did back in early April. And
virtual ceremony.
Yeah, the first virtual ceremony that you offered online. And I was, with you and on medicine too. And I had this thought exactly like you're describing of, well, everything is always ultimately for the collective good. So Donald Trump is somehow for the collective good, even through the like funhouse mirror craziness of it all somehow.
I mean, only in the sense like that if we hold the truth that everything is moving always towards the light, or you say that like you can't be outside of it. Like all that is all that is. So it's all that is, right? It's all in service of this growth. But that's honestly, you know what? It's a very dangerous thing to be saying these days.
Yes.
Because I don't want to discount, and I'm not discounting the suffering that's happening and all the huge injustices that are going on and the revolution that is happening right now. That is all absolutely happening, 100%. And if anything, that's why it's so crazy right now, because there's so much transformation and change occurring at once. And you throw the fires on top of it, and it's like, it's literally the earth like fertilizing itself in a way and clearing away all this crap that...
Well, unpack this with me for a little bit, because I've been thinking about, back in February, we went to Australia and we bought masks in early February because we were going to Australia because Australia was burning.
January.
Yeah. Australia was burning in February, and before that in January, the Amazon was burning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got back from Australia. We didn't use our masks at all. We were there. But then when the coronavirus came, we were like, oh, we already have these things. And it's this like respiratory infection, right? Coupled with the fires that have been burning for a long time. But since the Amazon one's almost nonstop, it seems. Then with George Floyd and the I can't breathe, like this metaphor of oxygen, breath, the earth burning, losing that sense within yourself, how it's connected to the heart and the lungs. What does that bring up for you?
What came up for me when you said that, which is a beautiful way to connect the dots with George Floyd, I think about prana, and I think about breathing being the doorway into the soul, and the breath being the doorway into spirit speaking to us and simplicity, and then obviously in, out, the duality of it as a representation of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start just thinking about all these things I've had to do lately with breathing.
Yes.
And how it's sort of either accentuating it or stultifying it, but it's all wrapped. I've actually never thought about this. It's all wrapped around breath.
Yes. Yeah. And even like we were talking this morning, some people saying, I don't want to wear a mask because it cuts off my oxygen supply.
That's what I saw some guys saying
Or something
that.
along those
His
lines.
thinking,
But just more
I don't,
of
and
that,
according to him, that's scientifically proven, but it's like, oh, is that so?
more of that same theme of I can't breathe. The earth, the animals, through the virus, through the masks, through abuses.
Yeah, and even just like the struggle of black people saying like sort of metaphorically, I can't breathe. It's like enough. That's just another example.
Well, and that's what you say on the cusp of expiration.
Oh God.
You just let out a big breath.
Well,
then.
another way to look at expiration, what you could say is a threshold, right? Some kind of ultimate threshold.
Yeah.
And you look at the concrescence of Moore's law of processing speed. You look at the climate and greenhouse gas. It's also being exponential. Virus is expanding into our world, and the coronavirus right now, which is again exponential. All these things, in the words of like Terence McKenna, are moving towards some kind of concrescence, a casuistry, as he would say. Where does that go? From a fractal point of view, it goes forever. But there seems to be in this 3D reality a point where it's like there's a point. And this is where singularitarians look at that as being it's the AI kind of thing coming online, which I don't hold that view. Yeah, you could.
I would say it already has.
Yeah, that's another amazing discussion. But nonetheless, it's like if we're pushing up against the edges of a boundary, what is that boundary? What are we pushing up against? And is there another side? Or is that just like another timeline of existence of, well, this isn't around anymore. I don't want that. I'm just sort of spitballing. But I also, look, when you take sort of a bodhisattva vow or a vow to bring awakening to all beings, including yourself and everyone else, you're in service to the transformation. You're in service to the burning of the fields, if that's the way that the field is fertilized. And that's a tricky thing to unpack, because it's like, it's like saying like back in World War II, well, I'm in service to Hitler. It's like, fuck that. I don't want to be.
What are you then saying that you are in service of?
Well, I've made dedications in my life to being in service to the unfoldment of the betterment of our growth in humanity, like our soul's path. Are you on board with your soul's path or not? I'm not saying that like a challenge. It's just sort of an interesting question. And if I'm saying, let's say you have choice, let's just say. So if you're not, okay, well, you have all the time in the world, in the universe, and all choices are valid.
Right now, let's say I'm not on my soul's path. You're saying
choose not to be.
Well, sometimes it's a choice, sometimes it's not.
Right. I'm just an argument, so to speak.
You would say it's okay because you're going to live again and you'll have another chance.
I mean, look, my heart says yes. I don't know.
No, we don't know.
I don't know. Of course I don't know. But my heart says yes. But it's not about knowing, in a sense, with the little k, unknowing. If it were, there'd be no point.
I had this thought the other day. We were talking about knowing the other night, and this like overdrive of knowing that I feel is fueling a lot of the chaos and schizophrenia. Just looking at it like a pun, like knowing equals knowing, like no, yes, no. Like as soon as you know, you're actually cutting off opportunity for possibility and more. And you've come out of like yesness or mystery by saying that you know equals no. Are you following me?
I'm not. And I promise people we have not smoked any weed. We're totally sober and driving.
KNOW equals NO. Because when you say I know something, that means everything else is a no. And this one thing is a yes.
By making it a yes, you've cut off something.
Yes.
So inherently
and so
there's a no.
as long as you're in the unknown or in the mystery, you're still in like this phase of possibility and all things that could be yeses. But we're conditioned from early education that to know is to be right and to not know is to be wrong.
Yes.
But what if being in the unknown is actually right?
Well, this makes. I'm not flipping around here. I'm just continuing. So this makes me think about the new record I've been recording. So we were down in Boulder. I was doing a lot of mixing, and I've been playing with the title of the record being Possible.
Oh, yeah.
And we're talking about why. And you're talking about exactly what we've been sort of dancing around.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting when you make a record that's largely instrumental because you're like, what is this record about? And usually when there's lyrics, it's a little easier. You're like, well, I keep talking, I'm singing about this and that. And there are some lyrics on the records. But I keep coming back to this feeling of what does it mean to think that there's infinite possibility? I'm not saying that in this hippy-dippy, like, oh, it's infinite, crystal, fractal, beautiful realities. I'm saying, like, literally, there's always this infinite possibility in front of us. And if we're in this time where we are having the fields burned and going through the transformations and our systems and habits and routines are breaking down, there's so much fertile possibility in that.
Yes.
And that is what I see in front of myself and in front of the world. And boy, are we on the precipice of something where it's like that possibility could be really beautiful. Like there's a doorway here for real, beautiful, meaningful change. It's right there. And there's also possibilities for real chaos increasing right there.
I feel like what I've witnessed since the beginning of Corona is we were in this place of unknown that was traumatizing and really difficult for people, and out of their desire to know over the past few months, why is it here? How did it start? What does it mean? Vax or no vax, all that kind of stuff, that like grasping towards knowing is what's caused the chaos and the disconnect and the confusion. Like the confusion's gotten even deeper out of the desire to like grab into the knowing. And so staying in this place of possibility, like you're speaking of, feels like what would actually be the healing balm. Like, can you hold yourself in this fertile place of unknowing?
And what's crazy is it's always that way, right? We just thought we knew. It was easier. The mirage of knowing was easier. Like, hey, I could make a plan in 6 months and it probably will happen. Like that date will stick.
Our muscle of that got really strong.
Yeah. And it just really painted a really opaque Maya all around us, because it's like, that is never how it is. And now the veil has been pulled off, and it's like, oh man, what do I stand on now? Because the things I stood on before, I can't. So yes, possibility. And that's something that's been coming up again and again. And so that's what I think the record is about, is choosing that path or pointing that ship, but also recognizing that we can't. Like, there's a song that features Lorraine Weiss. She was on one of the podcasts, my podcast. And I decided to try sampling the podcast, which I've never done, and put that in a song. And it worked out really well. And Lorraine's talking about how you can kind of try on new clothing and drop, expectations and perceptions about who you think you are. And then the chorus, I'm singing, can you surprise me? Can you let it be? And you were like, you were kind of poking me. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean to you, to me?
Yes.
And
I was asking.
Because I guess it could mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And to me, it was sort of what I was saying, is like, maybe I could surprise myself. Like, I was kind of a please. Like, can you surprise yourself and just let things be and fall into that newness of what is? Right?
Can you fall into what is?
And let that, and to me at least, that's like kind of like surprising myself against my expectations of what maybe I normally would do or have done, or
what would you
worked
normally
before.
do?
Well, in what situation, right? I don't know. But I know that there's a newness now as the structure of things have broken down, that you don't have to do it the same way. And then many times you can't. And so the gift and the frustration is that. Has that come up for you at all? Has there been something that's Many things in your life have broken down that were there before.
Yeah.
There were like things in the 3D world, like your
Yeah.
business
Yeah. I had a yoga
and more.
studio that was really thriving in a big community hub and incredible that I had for 10 years that I decided to close early July because we couldn't operate. We weren't open and we couldn't. And I decided I didn't want to operate in the way that we were being forced to operate now.
There was no business model with 12 people in the room.
No.
And there's a big studio.
So that was a huge loss and an act of letting go. Like I consciously chose, I'm going to let this beautiful entity, it's go now. And
yeah, you were mostly forced into it, but you had a choice. I guess there could have been ways to try to hang on.
I had a choice.
It was tough though. I don't know how. The debt just kept mounting up and up and up.
You were encouraging me to not close it for a long time,
or to wait, but just because it was such a great business and it's such a spiritual grounding center point for Boise, Idaho, but you were the one who were the clarion light in that, saying, "Look, despite the fact that it's sort of being closed, I am also looking for a way to open myself up to new opportunities." I mean, you were quite visionary in that for yourself.
When so much of my creative life force has gone into holding it and being its anchor, that when I let go of that anchor, all of that energy would come back to me, and that's exciting.
So how long ago was it, and have you already felt those reverberations?
That was 2 months ago, and I would say yes, but I'm also cognizant to allow myself this in between time that I'm not hyper. I don't want to do the same thing, which is like jump from doing to doing. I want to honor the process of something dying and the transition and creating space after it as a way to honor it.
And to grieve.
And to allow things to transform. I don't expect there to be a new thing suddenly. I had coincidentally just started working with ketamine therapy, offering that, but that was something that I had started in the fall. It just happened to align with the closing.
Yeah, you've had things fill the gaps as gifts, like more life coaching just came into your life and clients and the ketamine therapy. And it's not the same as it was at all financially yet. But I've noticed an energetic shift of like you opened a doorway and some things have come through.
I feel personally a lot more present. I feel very grounded. I feel very clear. I feel a sense of surety and a strange amount of confidence, I would say, and also like just relief. I think it was harder for me when I was trying to keep the studio opening while it was sinking and failing and trying to keep everybody else happy at the same time. And then when I stopped doing that, that feels a lot better.
Yeah.
And you were incredible throughout that. Like you spoke to in the beginning of the podcast, our energy towards each other shifted in a way where you have been so patient and loving and like just an incredible caregiver for offering support and peace as I go through that process.
Well, I really feel, I've been grateful that we have had a relationship during this time, even more so because clearly dating would suck right now, but more than that, I just can't imagine trying to do some of this alone. And my heart goes out to everyone who's, because walking this walk right now is so unique for each person, and it goes through different phases, right? Mm-hmm. And some people are thriving actually, and some people are having a tough time on the surface level, like with, the kids are at home, not at school, and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's environmental things. And some people, it's much worse. They have to be frontline working, or they're getting sick, or they know someone who's died, or people have died. A lot of people have died. It's like, so I don't want to undermine the diversity of the process for everyone and to say that it's all the same. But what I'm speaking to are sort of like the larger holistic energies that I'm just sensing are bubbling up, through this process, this diverse process for people.
Yeah, and that you're grateful to have the support of a relationship right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Most
sure.
definitely. Most definitely. Definitely. And we have had different opinions throughout it that we've had to navigate. And in many ways, it's strengthened our relationship as things have gotten more intense or less intense.
Yeah,
Or
I don't know
do
if
we
you want
wear
to
a
talk about
mask?
that.
Yeah,
But
for
Are
sure.
you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
We.
I would imagine a lot of relationships with two people have different opinions.
Well, I'm assuming you're talking about coronavirus, not just
Yeah,
opinions in
yeah.
general. I mean, yeah,
No.
we have different opinions, but we found as things started to get on that we had different, let's say, viewpoints about coronavirus, about COVID,
Yeah.
and that I I did not expect that. I was a little. I don't want to just put you in a box, hon. I mean, but
Well,
some
I'll
of the
do my best to not put you in a box, too.
I don't. Yeah. Why don't you start? Let's be ginger about
Well,
this.
you're someone who I'm not going to put you in a box by saying this, but who tends to be more like, by the book, this is what's going on, and you're precautionary. And I'm more,
I'm an Eagle Scout. I prepare.
he is an actual Eagle
I
Scout who
prepare,
prepares.
and I foresight, and I do my research, and I also try to take a really balanced point of view. I mean, I do try to take in all points of view, the crazy, everything. But as I got out of my 20s and my early 30s, I had times where I fell into a lot of gullible holes. As in my kind of exuberance in my early spiritual path, that really taught me some beautiful lessons about sharpening my own blade of my mental acuity and discernment, and saying, like, let's be a little more grounded. My father, I feel like, brought this to me. I mean, he's got it in spades where he doesn't have much of the other quality, but of really being like, what's Occam's razor here? What's most likely true?
Right.
And I will probably ride that line as opposed to entertaining some of the more wild concepts, because in my mind, I can see them as dangerous, particularly for myself.
And, this is good. You describe you and I'll describe me.
Great idea. And I had super long hair the whole time. It was just this gorgeous mane. I don't know where it came from. It was there, believe me. We got no pictures, though. Okay, Joe.
And I am someone who likes to investigate and explore and holds room for all kinds of possibilities. And for, decades have been more on the internal investigative. I'm afraid to say the word conspiracy theory now, because when I was looking into those things,
Back when that was cool.
20 years
2012.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, or pre that. It was different than it is now. And so
It's
that
dangerous
kinda,
now.
Yeah, that kind of stuff started to pop up into my sphere when all of this, or as all of this has been going on. I hold space for, what are they saying? How does this fit together? What does this look like? And I doubt the collective narrative more so than you do.
We both doubt it. We just doubt it in different degrees. I think everyone has been hoodwinked and swindled by the snake oil of the American dream and the corporatism and the lies and the NSA. We all have, whether you know it or not, and we all feel it to different degrees. And that is really the root of the belief in many conspiracy theories, because there is a crack, there is a fissure of doubt in our lives.
Oh, 100%.
So there's no way around that. But we both entertain some of these ideas. I just have been not going down. I didn't accept a lot of them.
Right, and you come more from the.
I looked at the 5G and I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Well, I'm not saying what I believe or don't believe, but my core belief was I'm not going to get the coronavirus, and I feel very sure about that. And that may be very naive of me, but it feels so true in my being that it's strong for me. Where you would have more the mindset, if or when I get the coronavirus, and I
What
would
will
say,
I do? Yeah.
don't say when you get it.
Yeah, I hear that. And I was having dreams every single night that a mask of some kind was in every single dream I had, and you never did.
I never dreamed
So
of.
it's like,
I've never dreamed of masks.
I mean, look, but what was challenging was our concept of reality in some ways was starting to diverge into different paths. And I didn't know how do I accept and hold the fact that maybe we don't agree on some what I thought to be some pretty core aspects about what was going on, and what was going on in my mind then affected what we do, right? Like the decisions we make as a pod, as a family, and what the kids do or don't do, what I do or don't do, sort of like our own internal agreements and protocol. Because God knows they weren't coming from anywhere else. Everyone's just sort of like, okay, figure it out.
Yes.
You guys make up your own mind.
Yes.
And our friends in Australia, I just heard from Yolanda down there, and she said in Melbourne, they couldn't go out of their house, but what was it, 30 hour a day or something? And you could only go 5 kilometers when you did go out for essential needs. I mean, let me tell you, here in the U.S., it ain't like that. It's like
every man for himself.
You don't tell anybody. You do what you want, and you figure it out. And good luck figuring out what's real, because and that was really the essence of what was going on between us. It's like each of us as individuals trying to figure out what's real for each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to have different realities about that. And that was really tough for me. And I'm saying this like it's in the past tense because I feel like you've journeyed a bit through that. Not that you're like on board with my vision at all, whatever that is. I'm just saying that I've sensed a progression for you.
Yeah. And I would say maybe I would agree with that, because my nature is one to be like, what's all out there? Let me look at all of this stuff. Let me hold space for everything. Now my internal compass is what makes me feel less separate and less judgmental and more at ease. And that's the path that I'm going to ride. So I'm not someone who gets into the us versus them narrative, or that there's like a giant overlord conspiracy underground something that's pulling all the strings. I feel like there's a lot of different things going on at once, and I can only come back to what feels the healthiest psychologically, spiritually, internally. Does that make sense?
Sure. And I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't hear you saying that you're like sticking your head in the sand because that feels better.
No. And when we were in the beginning 2 months ago, when I would bring up different theories for you and, I wanted you to look at them, I'm like, I just want you to look at this so we can talk about it. I'm not saying look at this because I believe it, but let's have an intelligent conversation about all different sides of things.
Yeah. And I did look at those things, and
then we talked about it.
Yes, that's a very political way of saying it. No, I'm kidding.
I feel.
Yeah. I don't think anything should be discounted just outright for no reason. I think, look, if you want to say something's BS, then take a look. Dig into it. I'll take a look.
Yeah, and I do fear. I've told you this. I fear the repercussions of the things that are occurring, or rights or liberties that are changing, that change permanently, and it's a slippery slope. I am afraid of that.
Sure,
and I don't know what that looks like.
Really good thing to keep our eye on, and it is scary. And these things, I think, when anything happens, no matter what it is, good or bad, there's always these people who have power who are going to try and take advantage of it, because that's what we do. We try to take advantage of situations for the better of us, and that can be not good for people who are the have-nots, which is, frankly, most of the country. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because people who have all the money and power is a very small group. So that's out there in the field. I don't doubt that. And I think what I kept coming back to is like, and we were talking about this on a hike the other day, is how does that affect our actions, our decisions, and our inner process in our mind on a day-to-day? And does it take over in a way that's destructive? Because some things, some theories are so grand that you're never going to be able to prove it. So if that's the case, and even if it was true, what are you going to do other than just, I'm going to keep an eye out for that? Because I can't let that subsume my mind like its own virus that just takes over.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was speaking to. The more I would feel an us versus them narrative, the more I knew that I had taken a wrong turn somewhere. And that in itself was a virus. And I wanted to back up into not head in the sand, but somehow like aware and accepting and present and alert and staying in the unknown, like I was speaking to too. I'm going to have to accept that I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is a good thing to bring up because I agree that you don't know and I don't know. We can never know, and there's this larger sort of metaphysical idea of not knowing. And I also feel that some things we do know. And when I say that, let's say capital K no and little k no. Like we can never little k no, and this is tricky.
Okay,
Let me feel this out because saying we can never know, I feel like, is a bit of a cop-out in the sense that sometimes it's important to choose even if you may be wrong in the future. It's important to say, like, look, of course I can never know, but I can make an educated decision, or I can look at this and I'm going to choose to,
for example,
I'm going to point the ship this way. For example, like, pick any of these conspiracies or anything, but you could say, like, is the virus real? Some people think it's not real.
I think that there's really a virus.
I know you do. I'm saying, okay, what's an example of something that I guess?
Well, here's a big one. Does wearing a mask keep you safer? Do you know that?
Okay. So when you say that word no, I'm assuming you're saying, like, do I know scientifically 100%?
Yes.
I'm not a scientist, and but here's what I know. I've seen several articles from institutions that I tend to think, like, most likely it's a safe bet. This is a real article, and this information is legit. And and when they say things like, this kind of mask might help you 90%, like an N95 is like 95%, and it goes through the list, and I'm like, that all seems pretty logical. And no one's saying, like, anything's perfect. I'm like, that makes sense to me. Like, my gut, I'm like, yeah, I have no reason not to believe that other than that guy who we heard the other day saying, according to him, scientifically proven, the body needs oxygen, therefore,
you shouldn't wear a mask.
You shouldn't wear a mask. I just think I took a wrong turn, too, by the way. So we'll have to figure this out.
Well, I would say...
I didn't know where I was going, you see, and I thought I knew. And now everything's totally...
Did you really
foobarred.
take a wrong turn?
Yeah.
I would say that I don't know. The thing I know about masks is it makes you a lot happier wearing them.
I find that to be a bit...
but I do know that.
Talking down.
No.
I don't enjoy wearing them.
No.
Look, I just think it's the kind of thing, like, it makes...
I'm not saying that in the way to talk you down. I'm saying what I know, me personally, to be true for you, it's a good thing in our relationship.
Doesn't it seem that if you're expelling something out of your lungs, that by wearing them, I'm less likely to give it to other people? That's my main thought. Like, if we all wore those, then we'd probably not be spitting it out everywhere, whether or not it would protect me from getting it that much. It just seemed like if we all had that compassion for other beings, for that inconvenience, it would likely pay off. Like, we could maybe get things under control.
Yes.
That's what I mean. Look, I don't know. That's just my feeling. And I don't enjoy the process any more than the next guy. It's not comfortable. And I'm sure it is not a very, it has a lot of problems and holes in the procedure. That's why everyone should cut a hole in the middle of their mask so they can breathe better. Everybody knows that.
I posted on Facebook months back when we only had our one mask we had gotten before Australia, and I had lost it. Like, I lose sunglasses, they just disappear. And I said, is anybody making masks locally? Where can I get them? And a lot of people sent me recommendations, and then there was other people that were anti-maskers that were giving me a hard time. And my stance was, it was like, look, guys, I just needed to go places.
You need it so you can go places? Yeah, it's the new key to get in.
Whether or not I believe it, I need a mask or not, I know that I need one.
So I'm unclear. So you believe you don't need a mask or something? Or
I have no idea.
Yeah, but you do. That's what I'm saying. Is like you saying we don't know is a bit of a not choosing. Doesn't it seem obvious that it would help?
Well, I feel like I do choose by wearing it.
Yeah, but you're saying because you're forced to, and you're choosing not to choose in a way.
You know what? It's a hard one for me. It really, really is.
How could it not be helpful, I guess, would be my question.
I'm going to take the fifth.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Guess we'll talk about that one offline. I found the line. I love you, and I apologize if I have
No, you don't have
crossed
to
the sacred line of mask.
I'm
How
the one that brought
dare I?
it up. I'm the one that brought it up as
That's
a
true.
topic
That's
because
true.
it's a hot one, and I feel it's a vulnerable place for me to stand in of not knowing, and I'm sure I can get a lot of flack for that. But I am at the same time making a decision to wear a mask.
Who are you voting for? No. Okay. But look, I will give credit and credence to say, in general, like not knowing is a beautiful place there is a lot of strength in that. Because as you originally were saying, when you do know, in a sense, you're closing yourself off. You've created that duality. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It comes back to like, and what's the way through duality? What do the yogis say? Breathing. Meditation, breathing. Psychedelic journeys, breathing.
Presence, accepting what is, isness, being.
And you came back to this sort of analogy of the fires and all the breathing that can't be done or that's being challenged. And that is the pathway to the soul. It's through the breath. And the mask itself, yet another obfuscation of breath.
And I inspire, is like to breathe in and also this act of being inspired, but inspire also as spirit and like breathing in spirit. Just as another connection for breath.
So it's like the unsustainability of the world we've been living in and it's been dreamt up in our collective dream. As it burns away, there's an unsustainability to that itself. Like the air is polluted. Before we can get to the clearer skies, it's getting darker and thicker and harder. I feel that. And at the same time, I feel creatively inspired, and maybe that's because, this is all the stuff that we've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah. That's where I said it feels like the warrior in me is activated.
Yeah. And I'm just a bit, I think some of us who are starting to feel that, I think all of us out there feel it in our different ways. We're a bit surprised too, because it's like, I thought it'd be aliens landing down. This is like, we were talking about the Oribus, the snake eating its tail.
Yes.
It's like, this is it. This is it. It's like, there is nothing else forcing us to make these decisions, and we're sort of eating our own tail by not collectively coming together as one species, one people. Instead, we choose the polarization. We choose the things that destroy ourselves when we have the capability to turn the ship. And maybe whatever poetry is in that, man, but there it is. The Oribus in front of us, that is, and it's happening now.
I wonder if someone could, like the thought is...
Is it Oribus or Oribus?
Oribus. I like the phrase, the mantra, I'm doing this to myself. I'm doing this to myself.
Oh, yeah. And we were saying the Hopi phrase, the ones we've been waiting for.
We are the ones we've been waiting for.
And I'm like, but what if you turn that around and be like, for this?
Right.
For us to eat ourselves so that we can go through to the next thing.
But I'm doing this to
so
myself.
So we can clear the field.
It's a self-reflective process of the internal chaos or anger or resentment or fear or peace or joy or serenity or contentment. It's self-generated.
And I mean, if you think about it, there's no other way, right?
There's no other way, but we have been conditioned to point the finger and to blame outside.
And feel like victims.
And that's the polarization that's created. But when you're doing that, the result is I feel separate within my own being. When I'm projecting separation outward, I feel it within my own being. That's how, like I was speaking to, when I start to feel us versus them, I know I've taken a wrong turn because I'm feeling that within my own thought patterns.
So that's like an internal litmus test you're saying for yourself too.
Yeah, but it's the symptom of a projection outward, but it's felt inward. and it's outward at the same time. So then I turn the dial and I change it back to non-judgment of other, and then my internal self becomes more content and peaceful and serene and accepting. And it's getting back to a path of acceptance all the way.
So
And
how is that happening like now for you? I mean, how do you accept and grieve? Like, how do you accept and be an activist? How do you be a full participant in the transformation on all levels? We have, racial growth and change and economic strife.
It gets back to, I think, what is possible. What is it? What's in my field that I'm able to change? What's happening in right here now for me?
What is?
Well, the first place that you start from is yourself. I am in control of my own thoughts and behaviors and actions. I know that to be true. Or, there's a lot of unconscious, of course, too, but for the most part. And then so it always begins with the self. And then the sense of the immediate sphere and dharma, like you were speaking to a long time ago when we first started talking.
Time ago.
Is your soul living out your soul's mission or whatever you had said, remember?
Yeah. Like, are you choosing to be on your soul's path? Like, what does that mean to you to have that be a decision?
And so everyone's soul's path is different, and not everyone is designed to be a frontline activist, but some people are.
Sure. And I use the term activism, I guess not literally. It may be literal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what does that even mean? But I think in some ways being a warrior is being an activist, and it's going to manifest, as you're saying, in many different ways today. We all have our unique role to play, but we have a role to play.
Yeah, totally.
As opposed to sitting back and taking those active roles. I mean, that's sort of like what anti-racism is, for instance. Like, it's proactive.
And I think one of the proactive things that I do is remain conscious of what I'm ingesting in my consciousness.
Yeah, we picked up a little bit of the Netflix special. What's it called? The Social
Dilemma.
So far, I'd say it's something that I've been talking about a lot on this podcast, and it sums everything up so perfectly because it's a lot of brilliant people like Tristan Harris, among many others. And I highly recommend watching it if you haven't already. I haven't seen the ending, though, so I don't know. That's when the aliens land, and I'm like, I knew it. But about how these things are influencing us, and the only real people, they talk about how the responsibility falls on these tech companies for them to make the changes because they're the ones screwing with everybody. But I'm sort of like, that's true, but the only one you can really count on is for you individually to make those changes from the inside out.
Yeah.
You're the only policeman, or I should say, curator of your own attention. That's it. And everyone's vying for it. And I know I sound like a broken record saying this over and over again on the podcast, but it might have been Tristan who I heard say that your attention is your currency. It was someone. It's a brilliant phrase. I'll give him credit.
Somebody.
He's a brilliant guy. And maybe I could just segue into this relates. And you were talking, and I want to bring this up. I think this is important about the wellness community QAnon thing.
Sure.
Can you summarize what that is?
Well,
it's related to what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the end of last week, I'm in the wellness field. And so I started seeing peers post wellness leaders or the wellness community taking a stand against QAnon, and looking just like one article further into that I did. It was about, conspirituality and how those who are in our modern way spiritual, who are open to different possibilities and finding their own way and questioning what truth is, becoming susceptible to these deeper, more distorted projections,
mostly conspiracy
of
theories. Yeah.
QAnon. And I'm a little ignorant personally on QAnon.
I love it when someone asks me, because I love explaining to them with a straight face, and they're just like staring at me like, what?
Yeah,
That's the thing.
I heard that phrase first from you.
QAnon?
Yeah.
Or not like a Pizzagate pedophile ring?
No, the
Oh, okay.
QAnon. I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Well, but so
But
the idea being of the wellness communities, how it needs to sharpen the blade, its own blind spots, gullibility, or glossing over things on the ground level. They're valid concerns. And so I think the impetus, as you were explaining it, was that people in the wellness community were taking a stand to say, like, hey, for instance, this thing going on where this is starting to gain some traction and get like in the real world, probably largely based on social media.
yes, 100%.
We're going to, on social media, we're going to take a stand and say we're going to be actively against this thing as taking a stand to say that we're not going to casually let this pass, or as some people, I guess, have done who have some influence, been casually in support, maybe without either recognizing it or not fully recognizing what they're doing and the literal influence that has.
Yeah. What's so fascinating to me now is, pre 2012, right? It was all this was so fringe. And so for the fact that it's all being talked about so openly by everyone is so curious to me.
Well, let's put that in different categories, because like the idea, like the pedophile ring where they're eating the brains for life force, I never heard that kind of stuff back then.
Okay, well, I had.
Back in 2012?
Oh, yeah.
I guess I heard some of that stuff on like, what's the thing that the rich people go to? It's a real thing where they have the owl they pray to.
Oh, yeah, it begins with a D.
What's crazy is I met someone whose brother is in that group. And I was like, tell me about it. Like, 'cause we all know it's a thing. Anyway, point is that
Okay, I got a thing here.
some of these have popped up now, and they've gotten gasoline on the fire because of the way social media creates reality tunnels for people's minds and abilities to connect and only see what they want to see and only talk to people who have their same opinions. And these things start, in addition to the fact that there's actual fake information to make more chaos by bad actors in the world who are throwing that out there. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of different. I feel like it's way more intensified.
It's super intensified
And that fact
and
in the
very
documentary
different
that fake information is 6 times more likely
to
to spread, so it's more profitable.
Yeah. And well, again, the curious part is what was once very alternative is so mainstream, and it's driving the mainstream narrative. And I guess I didn't see it coming.
Well, flip side of that is there's a lot of other things that were fringe that are mainstream that are, I think, very good things,
Exactly.
like psychedelic science and interest and
Yes.
the yoga industry. I mean, yeah, there comes a shadow with all these things, but that is an indication
Well, it
of its
seems
rise.
like this is one of the underbellies, and so exactly like you're saying, it's we're the ones that we've been waiting for. This wolf-like pack that is like a collective of so many of us, where before we were siloed and doing our own learning or in small collectives. It's mainstream, and so. I guess the risk is, where is the ship going to crash or is it going to sail? And it
I would
can
say
do
both.
good.
I would say both, and that's what's like maddening. But it's always been that way. The yin and the yang. It's always the destruction, the Durga. There's always. It's the only way for the creation to be.
Kali.
Out of death comes life. And it's not that that I'm saying like, oh, we're all going to die. It's hardly that at all. It's sort of saying threading the needle through this time will take a lot of discernment from each of us on an individual level, more than we've ever had to use before. And we each will have to sharpen the blade of our own mind as the doorway into our heart. Because without that, I guarantee the powers out there that are trying to vie for our attentions are going to manipulate our beliefs and what we think is real and was not real better than they ever have in the past. And it will become very difficult. You can fall off sort of your center of knowing like, hey, I'm a human being. My feet are on the ground. I'm here to make decisions. I'm lovable, as Court says. I'm good enough.
And I would say it's okay to be unpopular, and it's okay to not know, and it's okay to disagree.
And it's okay to take the time to say, like, I'm trying to process this, right? You don't have to jump. Everything's moving very quickly.
Well, I want things to slow down. I think that's the speed. I feel like there's been a gear shift down and we're readjusting to this gear shift. It's like the clutch has been thrown.
There's definitely things have been slowing down. I know myself and a lot of us, the world's trying to, like, the grist of friction against that. But everything has slowed down. Like, you try to get anything done, it just takes a lot longer.
That's beautiful.
That's okay.
I feel like that's a new frequency in which we're adjusting to. And it feels uncomfortable and unusual because it's different and new, but there's going to be a lot of healing and adjusting to that.
And amidst that, many things are happening very quickly. Social change.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other things that are happening crazy fast. And amidst that, our, like, day-to-day life has to slow down. It's really interesting, like, pairing.
And the circle's getting tighter and smaller.
Is it? Yeah.
And bigger at the same time.
I don't know what's going on.
It's the paradox. We know we're in truth when we're in the paradox. That's one thing I rest on too. How do I know? Because it's a paradox. That's a litmus test for myself when both things are simultaneously true.
Well, on that note, this has been the Radha-Krishna Roundtable with no table at 80 miles an hour, the state speed limit. Heading north. And is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners out there?
I'll just say that I love you. I believe in you. We can do this. We are doing it. Slow down. Slow down and breathe.
It's good to reflect out there the medicine that you feel you need to receive. You can embody it as you're doing right now and push it out there. And funny thing is, golden rule, start to engender that inside yourself.
Kisses.
Keep walking. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Radha. Thanks for driving in the car, and thanks for having patience with me, and thanks for the conversation. This song you're hearing again in the background is Please Pass the Bliss, the instrumental version from the new Ram Dass Instrumentals release. Spores comes out on 10/2. The live stream Spores ceremony is October 3rd, Saturday, and Boise, Idaho, October 22nd. You can pre-order the Spores, or actually you can order the Spores vinyl really, really soon, this week. I'm going to put that up on eastforest.org. You guys keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do it with grace.